Hello, my queen agers. So, before we get started with the show, couple of things that I'd like to share with you. First of all, please leave a review if you haven't done so already. This is so important. It's a small gesture that makes a huge impact to grow the podcast. So go to Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave some stars, hopefully five, and write just a little review, a little something to encourage more women to start having the discussion about menopause. The second thing that I'd love to share with you is we have YouTube videos. If you prefer to watch videos, go to YouTube. Always hack my age, and you will find all of our guests there, and you get to watch them. And sometimes we have graphics or things that people share, so it's nice to see that on a video. And the next thing I'd like to share with you is we have our Biohacking Menopause membership program out and running and full force. So please join us there. What is this? This is a platform. It's called Mighty Networks, and it's like a Facebook community, like a group, but without that Facebook noise, distraction, and censorship. So we get frustrated on Facebook because sometimes they block us when we want to have a Zoom Q&A meeting, and they think that we're having some kind of sex party. And so they shut us down for a few days and then allow me access. So we got frustrated with that. And you guys have asked to have a private group. So please join me on Biohacking Menopause. And this is what you do, get our Q&As, right, with me. You send in your questions in advance and we go through them. I can take a deeper dive. Yeah, a lot of you guys send me questions on Instagram and Facebook, and I just cannot give you personalized attention. I need to know more about you. So this is an opportunity to be with a community that where I can answer your questions. We also have guest speakers who are experts in biohacking and menopause. Many of them are doctors themselves who charge hundreds of dollars for their time. So it's a privilege to have them answer our questions for you. And we have breathwork sessions. I am a certified Oxygen Advantage breathwork teacher. So I love to teach women how to breathe through menopause. We have podcast updates. You get notified of all of those. We have information posted that is not on any other platform. You get my personal attention, and we have a community of amazing, supportive women in here, women who are just like you, trying to hack menopause, trying to learn something new. We have a lot of other women who are experts in their own field in whatever it is that they're doing, and they love to share as well. So if you're an expert in your field too, please come and join us and share what you do. So this is a really intimate space. We can talk about whatever we want. We know that it's only women and it's safe. So I want to thank those early adopters who've already jumped in. These are our founding members, and you can be a founding member too. Founding members get some decision-making power. They have the best thing is they have a special discount. It's only $14.99 a month for our founding members, and that offer expires March 1st, 2024. So please, if you are on the fence about this, you got to jump in ASAP. You've got only about 10 days to decide this. So less if you're listening after February 19th. So please, if you want that March 1st deadline, go to biohacking-menopause.mn.co. Okay, not com, .co. And I can have a link to that in the show notes. You just jump in, join as soon as you can, because on March 1st, the price is going to go up to $24.99 a month. So become a founding member and join us there. And the last announcement I'd like to make is that we are having another cohort. Every month we have new cohorts of group guided sessions on the Menopause Energy Reboot program. This is a 4-week program where we meet every single week for Q&As to help guide you to get more energy. If you're fatigued, if you're tired, if you're dealing with all these menopause symptoms, any kind that you're having, you need to reboot the cells, the mitochondria. We need to get everything running optimally in order to hack those menopause symptoms. So please jump in on that. by February 24th, we have a special discount code for you, my listeners, 10% off with the code HackMyAge. So go to the hackmyage.com website. You'll click on the programs. I'll have links to that in the show notes as well, and join us there. So now let's get started on progesterone.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are. Today, our monthly Patreon meetup is just me. So I'm just going to record myself for you here. I am considering perhaps next month to transfer all of you guys over to Mighty Networks or Circle, one of these other platforms where we can actually interact and engage a little bit more. It's kind of like a Facebook group, but without all the Facebook noise. And it's a place where I can keep these recordings and save material and PDF documents and everything you need to know about biohacking menopause in one place that you can easily get to. So I'll keep you posted. The price will be the same. Plus, first early adopters will be able to get my energy reboot program or my hot flash program or something else there to make up for this little disturbance. But just hang on for that. It's coming soon. So let's get started. Today's meeting is supposed to revolve around progesterone. And you probably heard about progesterone in the menopause circle because you hear a lot about the sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. Okay, so progesterone is just one of the pieces of the puzzle, and that's what we're going to talk about today and give you an idea what to know about it. So, honestly, after doing this course with the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine, it's called the Menopause Method course, and it's a program that's designed to train doctors how to treat their menopausal patients. So, although I'm not a doctor, they allowed me to take it, and I learned so much from it. So, I'm going to share some things, and really, the story about progesterone should be spoken about uh, in the very beginning when you're talking about menopause, because so often it starts with estrogen. But really, progesterone is the key player. And when we're talking about progesterone, we're talking about bioidentical progesterone, right? Not synthetic progestogens. Okay, you may have heard of progestogen. Both progestogens, which is synthetic, and bioidentical progesterone come from a class of hormones called progestogens, which is different than progestins. Okay, so when somebody may say, found a study, progesterone is good or progesterone is bad or whatever, go back to the study and see, are they talking about progestins or actually progesterone? Okay, so really keep that in your mind when somebody's arguing a point. And progesterone, as you take it in a hormone therapy, can come in an oral formulation, transdermal, meaning you have topical, like a cream or a gel or something, and then you can have vaginal, you can have a patch, you can have IUD. There's so many different forms of taking progesterone. And so they're all made in a lab. Okay, it's not like they go and farm this stuff. They made in a lab, but the progesterone, because it's not synthetic, it's made out of diosgenin, which is derived from wild yams or soy. Okay, so these are plant-based hormones, right? And the reason why I say the story about menopause should start with progesterone is because first, uh, the the first of most common, say, changes in a woman's body after, say, puberty, uh, is in our mid 30s. Sorry, in our mid 30s, right? Because when we hear about perimenopause or menopause, we think about a woman in her 50s. Now we're starting to be aware of perimenopause happening in your 40s, but no one talks about menopause in your 30s. But that's when some of the major changes heading towards menopause start, right? So this is because of progesterone. Progesterone takes a real precipitous decline much earlier, much steeper than estrogen. Okay, and it happens in your mid 30s and it just goes like that. So it's really fast. see if I can share a screen here. Um, I'd love to show you this little allow open Zoom preferences. Let me see if I can get to share this little graph. It's super amazing. And there's another graph I want to share with you. So about 75% of your progesterone goes in your mid 30s. It just happens. And when you get to your 40s, then estrogens go down 35% gradually in your 40s, and then eventually to nothing, very, very little. Like you will always have hormones. Your body will always want to produce estrogen, progesterone, but in just a fraction of the amount that it's normally making in your 20s and 30s. So we're also, when talking about progesterone, we have to remember that there's a ton of it in our body, 100 times more than estrogen, right? Why aren't we talking about this more? And when we're thinking about our menopause cycle, right, of a menstrual cycle, right, you may see, the estrogen go up, and then eventually the progesterone goes up with as you're coming towards your period, and then they both decline and come down. So you should see, I'm going to show you first this little graph where it takes a steep decline, right? Here's progesterone in your mid 30s. Look at this, 35. And then here's estrogen in a more gradual decline, but it also is pretty steep, right? It's just relatively speaking, progesterone takes a steeper decline. And then when you look at your menstrual cycle, this is what I was explaining. Look at progesterone. If you were to make a real chart of what progesterone is like, it would look like this. And you never see charts like this. It's usually like here, right about here. And to give you an idea of how much progesterone we have is, so the ovaries secrete about 0.33 milligrams per I think it's dilliliter, it's supposed to be, and that's here. It looks like that. And then if you were to convert that to progesterone, it would be a 37, and just goes off the charts. Didn't even make it to the rest of this, this slide, but you can imagine where it is. So 0.33 versus 37. That's huge. Okay, so let me stop sharing. So that's what I wanted to share with you in terms of graphs. So progesterone is a seesaw in balance with estrogen. And why? Because estrogen is a stimulator, it stimulates growth, it stimulates production, it stimulates things that makes you a little bit more anxious and makes you a little bit more excited. A lot of good things and not so good things come with estrogen. And progesterone there is a great calmer, right? So when we want progesterone to balance out that excitement and that stimulation that happens with estrogen, right? So this is why you must take progesterone whenever you take estrogen, okay? But you can take progesterone alone without estrogen, but estrogen never alone. It's always got to go with progesterone. And that's because studies have shown that when estrogen is too high, stimulating a little bit too much, and we can overdo it with the estrogen because we may feel so good on it that we start to take more and more, and that thickens up the uterine lining of the lining of our uterus, and then that's a breeding ground for uterine cancer, and we don't want that. And I've heard some doctors even say that's even a little bit exaggerated. We shouldn't worry too much, but it's out there. It's a caution, and all the doctors just want to be safe and make sure. The women who do not have a uterus, if you've had a hysterectomy, very often doctors do not prescribe progesterone. They're like, well, uterine lining can't build up because you ain't got one. So don't worry about it. But progesterone is so much more than that, than just protecting your uterine lining. You get so many other great benefits from it, that why restrict that from a woman? So again, none of this is medical advice. I really should be, making this claim here in the very beginning, but please, you always have to talk to your doctor about your own situation. And I don't know your medical history. I don't know what you've been going through. I don't know what your symptoms are like. I really don't know what your risks are, because there's genetics and there's lifestyle, and then there's a history of cancers or heart disease and whatever. Do you have a tendency to blood clot? I don't know, right? This is you. And that's why you must always take anything you hear, including from me, with a grain of salt and question it. Always go with a little bit of skepticism and then ask your own doctor about it. And if you're not really convinced by your doctor, go and find another doctor, get a second opinion or a third one if you need. So, progesterone is the great calmer, estrogen is the stimulator. Um, Told you progesterone balances out the stimulation of estrogen. Um, Now, another interesting thing I learned from this course, and I'm bringing you a lot of this information from the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine, and Dr. David Rosensweet is the one who created this program, and he mentioned, well, he's been treating menopausal women for 25 years. Okay, so the guy has got a lot of experience, and he loves the research. He's a functional medicine doctor. He knows a lot of other things too. He brings in the research, but I like his critical eye and his skepticism as well. And as pro hormones as he brings out studies that are contradictory, because everything great that you hear about a certain hormone, well, you can hear something pretty bad. That goes the same thing for insulin. It's the same thing for cortisol. It's the same thing for so many other things that you may hear in terms of medicine, in terms of hormones, in terms of food, in terms of diet, in terms of everything. You'll always find a study saying it's great and another study saying it's not so great. And that's why clinical practice is really important. And Dr. David Rosensweet's got a lot of this clinical practice. And so what he does is he looks at the research and then goes, hey, let's try it on my ladies. And then he comes up with his own conclusions. And so what he found is that he's able to, with some people, treat breast density and pain, if you ever have painful breasts, by asking them to put their progesterone, topical progesterone, a cream or gel, whatever you may have, and apply it on the breasts. And that may help. But he's also had patients where they've done it and they have increased pain. So again, it's all up to you to obviously talk to your doctor about this. And then if you were to try it, then to make sure you communicate with your doctor. Just because you heard maybe it's good doesn't mean keep going if it's painful, right? So, progesterone is really quite harmless. It's so harmless that you can get it over the counter. You can get these things quite easily online through, I wouldn't get it through Amazon, but get it through a website that you trust. I even have some doctors and people I know in the health and wellness industry who have given progesterone creams to their 20-year-old daughters. Right? And it's not just girls. I think guys can benefit from this too. I did a great podcast with a doctor. What's his name? I forgot his name. It'll come to me later. But he's a little bit kooky. But we did a great podcast on adrenaline, and his whole thing, his shtick was just progesterone cream for men, women, young, old, and so yeah, he treats a lot of his patients. Dr. Well, I want to say Dr. Well, not well, but something like that. So anyways, yes, it's pretty harmless. And it's one of those things. And the reason why these doctors and these people I know have treated their 20-year-olds with this is because they tested their progesterone and they were so low. So they were symptomatic, meaning they were very anxious, racing mind, hard to sleep. They've tried a lot of other things. And then they thought, hey, maybe I should test for progesterone. They did. She was really low. And now they treat them with just a little bit of progesterone cream on your arms. And for them, it worked. The one thing you think about progesterone when you're taking your hormone therapy is that it sensitizes estrogen receptor sites to estrogen. So if you take too much, it can actually block some of the receptor sites of estrogen as well. And so then it causes a surge in estrogen and then maybe giving you other symptoms of an estrogen overdose, when in fact it's actually progesterone that's being overdosed. And hopefully your doctor will know all these things because that's what they're supposed to do. The other thing that's interesting is about progesterone is you need adequate amounts for thyroid function. Okay. When we talk about hormones, we're not isolating just the sex hormones and then you just deal with those because they three interact. No, They all interact with every single other hormone in your body. I like to explain that hormones are like a symphony, right? If one is off, then all the other ones kind of get out of tune. So we want to have a really, really healthy, robust and, uh, amounts of whatever hormone it is, right? And I'm not just talking about sex hormones; it could be thyroid, because thyroid put all the other hormones off too. So when you think about, I mean, this will give you an idea of why thyroid is affected by progesterone, is because when you think about when you have a cycle, or when you had a cycle, midway, you had a temperature increase, right? If you wanted to see if you were ovulating, yeah, take the temperature and it'll tell you. And it's this influx of progesterone that leads to an increase in thyroid function and increased metabolism for energy production. And that's why you have increased in body temperature. And I have links to some interesting studies here if you want some of those to explain that a little bit more. Progesterone is also important for bone health. Estrogen always steals the show. We always think, oh, it's estrogen for the bone and bone health and everything else. But no, progesterone is actually really important, and it needs to collaborate with estrogen in order to get that bone remodeling going. So E2 is actually estradiol. Remember, we have three types of estrogen. E1 is estrone, E2 is estradiol, and E3 is estriol. Usually when you take hormone therapy, you're taking estradiol and estriol, those E2s and E3s. E1 is not as important for menopause. So it's E2 is important for resorption of bone, that sort of breaking it down, reabsorbing it, and then P4, because there are different types of progesterone too, but we're not going to talk about those. We just need to know the one progesterone for menopause. And P4 is important for formation, right? So there's this breaking down and building up, breaking down. We want to break down some bone. We don't want it to only build up. We're going to have other issues. We want it to break down and build up, break down and build up. We want it to be in perfect harmony. And so that's important. Progesterone, remember I told you it's the great calmer. It's because it makes you feel calm. It makes you feel relaxed. And progesterone is also neuroprotective and neuroregenerative. Okay, it's protecting our brain, protects our bones, it protects our breasts, protects everything. So, but the breast thing is actually controversial, right? So there are studies that show progesterone is associated with a diminished risk for breast cancer compared to an increased risk for synthetic progestins. That's why we want to avoid the synthetic stuff. But you can also find contradictory studies. So Dr. Rosensweet recommends that doctors just don't exceed those progesterone dosages. And so what I generally hear from him and most other doctors, if you're taking oral progesterone, which is perfectly fine, don't ever take oral estrogen. And if you don't know why, we can do a whole other meeting on that. But oral progesterone may need to take because if the cream stuff isn't being absorbed through the body or not enough, then you got to switch to an oral. And it's usually about 100 milligrams. That's like the standard dose. You go to the pharmacy and they give you little pellets and 100 milligram dosages, but it may not be enough. So going up to 200 is very common, very normal, may need that. And if that doesn't work, then you'd have to talk to the doctor again and see if you can go up to 300 or 400. I don't think Dr. Rosensweet has anyone over 400, and that was like a very exception. So you don't want to get too much. And that's why you always test as well. If you're still having menopause symptoms, even with the progesterone, it could be the estrogen, could be the culprit. It could be so many other things. It could be the delivery method. It could be the dosage. It could be so many other things. So that's very important to know. So the other thing, actually, you may want to have your doctor check if you're testing for progesterone, and I'm sure your doctor will do this if they're trained in menopause medicine, is SHBG, that's sex hormone binding globulin, right? That's a hormone. That's a a globulin or a protein that is binding to the sex hormones. It's binding to estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone. It's holding on to it. If it's holding on to it, if that SHBG number is really high, it's not releasing those hormones into your bloodstream. It's holding on tight for one reason or another. So we want to have free testosterone and free progesterone and estrogen roaming around, not the stuff that's bound up. That'll give doctors a clue as well where you're going. So I mentioned you may need to go into an oral progesterone if the transdermal isn't working, which would be very normal. It's harder to get that sweet spot with transdermal. And it's very often, well, one, we're all by individual. So most likely because your body just doesn't want to absorb it, and who knows why. And the other reason could be dermal fatigue, and that means you may be rubbing the cream. Let's say you put your progesterone always on your arms. Well, the skin around that's getting real tired. It's not absorbing it as well anymore. And especially as we age, it becomes less sensitive, right? It's not as absorbing as well too. So as you age, you may find the perfect cocktail for your hormone therapy. And then 5 or 10 years later, you're like, I don't know, it's not working anymore. And it's not that it's not working anymore. You may just need to change the delivery method. You may need to change the site. So if that's what's happening, stop rubbing the progesterone on your arms. You're going to want to put it on your legs or your abdomen or somewhere else that the doctor recommends you to do that. So really try thinking twice when you think that it's not working. And that's when you might want to switch to an oral, or and you can also switch to a transmucosal delivery method, right? If you go, oh, I don't want to try yet the oral, I want to keep going with the transdermal, the creams, then you could put it in your vagina, like on the labia or the perianal mucosa area. So that's where you can get a lot of sensitivity there, and you can absorb it also quite well, or you have a good chance. I don't know if you'll absorb it or not. So how much to take? Again, a doctor will say they'll want you to take enough to alleviate your symptoms, and enough to avoid or just under to avoid that uterine lining buildup. And so first, you'll feel better. And then second, the doctor tests, and it's probably through as well, not only the testing for progesterone goalposts, where that sweet spot is, that Goldilocks zone, make sure you have enough for protection of the brain and the bones, but also enough to protect, not too much that it's enough to protect the uterine lining and not too much as well, because you don't want your uterine lining super thin either, right? So we need an ultrasound for that and monitoring. So another thing, if you are a woman who has not seen hormones in a long time because you went through menopause quite a while ago, let's say a couple of years ago, and you've not had hormone therapy, so your body has not seen hormones in a long time, um, then you got to go real slow, okay? Because your body is going to probably be quite sensitive to it. And if you have sensitivities or allergies to anything, you need to really, meaning a very low dose and increase gradually. And I think Dr. Rosensweet said about every 2 weeks, to increase the dosage, right? And if you're going with progesterone, an oral one, he would want you on 25 milligrams or less, right? Remember I told you that standard dose is 100 milligrams. And you'll know if you're sensitive because you're sensitive to everything. You're sensitive to food, to caffeine, to alcohol, to melatonin, whatever's out there, you're super sensitive and you know who you are. So another interesting thing, and when you're taking an oral progesterone, it's only about 10% what's in that pill is bioavailable. That means if you're taking 100 milligrams, then maybe 5 to 10 milligrams of circulating progesterone is circulating in your blood. So it's quite low. And 90% is metabolized into pregnenolone in the first pass in the liver. And that's a metabolite of progesterone. So to give you an idea, you're like, well, what does that mean? 5, 10 milligrams. So if you're thinking of a young, healthy, menstruating woman in her mid-luteal phase, and that's the very, beginning of, uh, sorry, the very end of your cycle, then, remember when you saw that curve and the progesterone goes up, she's got about 40 milligrams in her blood. Okay. And well, then you'd think, well, why does a doctor give you 100 milligrams? Why don't we take 400 so we can get 40 milligrams? Well, Dr. Rosensweet believes that it's no need to recreate these robust, youthful levels. Okay, 5 to 10 should be plenty. And that's again in his experience. You're going to see doctors. Dr. Felice Gersh, I think she would argue no, we want to have robust, youthful levels. I've seen her treat some women, and it's like, wow, she's just going to town with those hormones. And I mean, she's got a lot of experience too. So again, we got to be skeptical and trust your doctor, right? That's if you trust your doctor. If you don't trust your doctor 100%, then you got to go find a doctor. Find a doctor who knows what they're doing. Um, so the last bit of this talk about progesterone is going to talk about the excessive symptoms of excess and symptoms of deficiency of progesterone. So you can see, oh, I just started taking my progesterone and my estrogen, my testosterone, or whatever it is that you're taking. How do I know if I've gone too far with it without testing? Well, you'll probably start to feel drowsy, right? If you're feeling drowsy, or if you're waking up really groggy and or kind of edgy, it's possible that you got too much progesterone and may want to take it down. Um, Physical instability, right? Not quite straight on your feet, hot flashes. If that could be a very excessive dose, but hot flashes is one of those things. It could be an excess or it could be a deficiency. That's something to talk to your doctor about. Feeling depressed and low, because that's just too much progesterone for you. It's a little bit of dizziness, leg discomfort and pain, and water retention. Water retention can also be a deficiency as well. I mean, it's, again, one of those things a little bit harder to detect. So those are all symptoms that you've gone a little bit too far with the progesterone, and maybe you want to take it down a notch. If you've been on 200 milligrams, maybe bounce it down to 100. If you're a sensitive type and you reach 50, then maybe you want to go down to 25. And then again, you got to talk to your doctor. Now, the last part is how do you know that I don't have enough progesterone? Because you decided to take baby doses and take it real slow and start slow and easy. Well, you still aren't sleeping well. You're still waking up in the night, and you wake up in the night with a racing mind, and you have a problem that you just got to solve. You can't take it anymore. And that's not happening just once in a while, it's happening a bit more frequently. You got a little bit more anxiety, stress. You can't seem to handle the stress like you used to, because sometimes you go, well, it's normal to feel anxious and upset and depressed about, I don't know, your boyfriend moving out of town, or you're getting a divorce, or you are lost a bunch of money. Like, duh, anyone would feel anxious and upset and have a racing mind about it. But you may notice that in life you had some lemons thrown at you before and you were able to handle it better. You just, for some reason, can't get over this, and it's much harder. And it's not because you're getting older, it's because you don't got progesterone. You may want to try increasing the dosage or going on it. And again, remember, if you're not on hormones at all, but you want to play around a little bit with it, progesterone is a really good place to start. Again, ask your doctor. I think it's always a good thing. I don't want to give medical advice here, but yeah, there you go. The other thing that you may notice is that you're moody, right? Moody's progesterone is a bit low. Hot flashes again. I told you, hot flashes can mean that it's too much progesterone or too little. And so you have to kind of look at some of these other markers and see if you get 2 or 3 of them in the same zone. You've got hot flashes with breast tenderness, for example, could be deficient in progesterone. Breast tenderness can also be a little bit of too much estrogen, too. So take a look at your dosages and talk to your doctor. New breast lumps or enlarged breast lumps as well. So again, that's estrogen just taking over. It's out of balance and too high. And you got to balance it out with some progesterone to get that pain, that tenderness, that engorgement down. Water retention, kind of like I told you that before, it could be excess, could be deficiency. You have a hard time relaxing, right? Even if you go get a massage, even if you go reading a book, your mind is just nonstop and you just can't relax. If you're still cycling, you may have irregular periods. And again, if you're over the age of 30, you can pretty much guess it's progesterone is low. And the last thing is if you got PMS, it's still cycling, fibroids, and or endometriosis. Could be a progesterone thing. Progesterone may help with those things. So that's it, guys. I hope this was useful. I should have had my lamp on. So look out for the new community next month. I hope to get that launched. I will send you messages about that if it happens and when it happens. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up. So I hope you enjoyed the progesterone talk. If you have questions, just let me know. And yeah, reach out. I'm here for you. You guys are part of my VIP group. So you have access. And I would love to see you at more meetings. So take care. Have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you're at.